Fans love nothing more than to speculate and theorize about their favorite movies and TV shows, and there's probably no movie franchise more talked about and wondered over than Star Wars. While sometimes fan theories go off in insane directions, other times they're almost terrifyingly accurate and hit the nail right on the head, predicting future events that even George Lucas might not know about yet. Don't forget to hit that red subscribe button and ring the notification bell to keep up with the latest content from ScreenRant as soon as it comes out. Star Wars fans are a passionate, dedicated group who seriously know their lore and their favorite characters inside and out. While you might be able to take some of them in a fight, you can be sure that when it comes down to Star Wars knowledge, they've got you beat. That's why it's impressive, but not that surprising that they totally knew that Darth Maul actually survived his Dewey Coxing in Phantom Menace. They knew he was way too cool of a character to just stay dead, and lo and behold, he reappeared in Clone Wars the animated series with a funky new set of homemade spider legs to boot. And we can't forget his live-action return during the shocking twist ending in Solo, a Star Wars story. There is probably no character in Star Wars that divided fans more than Jar Binks. He showed up in the already questionable Phantom Menace and everybody lost their dang minds, and not in the way you'd want. Fans and critics hated him, like seriously hated him, so much so that George Lucas actually shrank his role because of the outcry. But that didn't stop fans from speculating about Jar Jar, and quickly they decided that maybe he was a Sith Lord. While that might sound totally insane, it might actually be right. A scene was supposedly filmed between Palpatine and Jar Jar where they plotted the future of the Empire, but was never included in the actual film. This might be one mystery that will forever remain unsolved. We all know that Princess Leia is way too badass to simply be a princess, and that she is so much more. Since the 1980s, fans have speculated about just how special she actually was, especially with the overt powers of her father and brother. There had to be something. They long suspected that she could sense the Force as well, and finally, 30 years later, they were proven right in The Last Jedi with her little Super Leia scene. She also uses the Force to sense Luke calling for her from Cloud City and can actually feel Han's death as it happens in The Force Awakens. We'd never met a princess like Leia before, and both she and Carrie Fisher are irreplaceable. We know that Kylo Ren had always dreamed about being like his grandfather Darth Vader, and that he clearly turned to the dark side at some point. But fans also knew that he had to have gotten his training somewhere, because one doesn't just become a highly skilled Jedi without training. We were given none of his backstory in The Force Awakens, so fans were left to figure it out for themselves, and they totally nailed it. They guessed that he had been trained by Luke Skywalker himself when he was still Ben Solo and not Kylo Ren, and that Luke had gone into hiding because he couldn't handle the guilt of having tried to kill him when he saw nothing but darkness within. Speaking of Luke going into hiding, the fans figured that whole thing out themselves too. Fans were so excited about The Force Awakens that they didn't even wait until the movie had come out before getting the ball rolling on theories. They dissected the trailer with more detail than a high school science class and actually figured out a ton of details hidden within. When there was no Luke to be found in all of The Force Awakens trailers, fans started to ask questions about their favorite Jedi. Some thought that he actually became Kylo Ren, which gets points for creativity but has clearly been disproven. Others, though, predicted that he had become jaded about the Jedi's role in the universe and put himself into exile because of guilt and in order to protect the ones he loves. So they missed a couple details about his exact reason, but it's still pretty impressive deduction from a couple of trailers. Not only did they predict almost Luke's entire storyline, but fans also managed to get a hold of the fact that he would come back with a super cool new power that no one had ever seen before. And of course, they were right on the money. We see Luke in a meditative state, and that he is actually in two places at once. While they didn't know what the power would be, fans definitely called this one too. Fans had Kylo Ren's number from the start. Across the board, people were predicting that he would struggle to stay on the dark side and eventually become drawn back to the light. Based off of the trailer for The Last Jedi, they predicted that he would betray the First Order to save his mother, Princess Leia, and eventually turn on Supreme Leader Snoke as well. And while we now know that Kylo doesn't actually turn to the light in the end, the second part of the theory turned out to be totally true. Not only does he betray Snoke, he actually teams up with Rey to defeat him. No one has ever really cared about the stormtroopers. They always have just been the anonymous foot soldiers with relatively ineffective laser guns that make awesome sounds, but don't ever actually seem to hit anyone. That was until the new trilogy, when we get to know the stormtrooper formerly known as FN-2187 or Finn. But fans actually predicted something about another stormtrooper, which turned out to be right. We see Finn interact with this other guy during battle, and fans everywhere imagine that they actually knew each other and had fought and maybe trained together in the old days. This was confirmed in the book Before the Awakening, much to everyone's delight. Rey entered the world of Star Wars with not too much of a backstory, and no idea who her parents were, or are. Because she doesn't remember anything about their identities, fans immediately started to speculate about all the possibilities of who could have brought Rey into the world. Some thought, and many hoped, that she could either belong to the Kenobi, the Skywalker, or the Solo families. But one way less satisfying theory actually got it right. It's confirmed by Kylo that Rey's parents were actually nobody special at all. While he could be lying, fans of their theory consider themselves vindicated. We do love our movie bad guys, and perhaps no one quite so much as good old Darth Vader. While he isn't in any of the sequels, fans just knew that he had to come back at some point during the new anthology movies, and boy oh boy were they right. Not only did they guess that he would be making a triumphant return, they also somehow nailed the fact that Rogue One would end with Darth Vader ominously and terrifyingly boarding the ship at the very last moment. Because Rogue One takes place right before A New Hope, they knew he'd be at his most powerful, and that it would be impossible to leave him out of the movie. Fan theories aren't even limited to movies and the animated series either. They extend even into the Star Wars video game universe. In the span of time between when The Force Awakens came out and before The Last Jedi trailer had even been released, fans had used the Battlefront 2 video game to solve a big mystery about the whereabouts of Luke Skywalker. These impressive investigators knew he was hiding on Ahch-To, and used the video game to determine that he had used a compass he discovered in the game to find the Jedi Temple in the movie. Another Force Awakens fan theory that turned out to be true was based off of the frightening Force-induced vision that Rey has about Kylo Ren and the Knights of Ren after touching Luke's old lightsaber. She has a vision of Kylo leading these knights into battle, but their identities stay a mystery. Right away, fans connected these knights to Luke Skywalker somehow, and little did they know their predictions would come true. While we never see the knights again, in The Last Jedi, Luke says that when Kylo turned to the dark side, he corrupted a group of his Padawans with him. Fans have pretty much taken this as a reference to the Knights of Ren, and they're probably right. The fans knew right away that Poe would be hiding something, and then predicted that he was working for the First Order in secret and would stage a mutiny against the Resistance in The Last Jedi. While they totally missed the mark by thinking Poe was working for the First Order, they did nail the mutiny thing, so the element of surprise was diminished just a bit. Fan fiction has done a lot for us in the last few years. The first and only example I can think of is that out of Twilight, it gave us 50 Shades of Grey, which is great? Did I say great? I mean terrible. But besides from that, a Star Wars fanfiction writer actually predicted a huge plot point from the recent Star Wars movies involving Kylo Ren and Rey. They guessed that there would be a force bond between the two that would allow them to communicate and pair them together, as unlikely as that may seem. This was, of course, confirmed in The Last Jedi. It's almost scary how good these sleuthy fans can be. Of course, it all began in 1977 with A New Hope, the first Star Wars movie that would launch decades of sequels, prequels, and a handful of notable careers. It would also start the Star Wars rumor mill, as fans just couldn't get enough after they left the theater. One of the earliest fan predictions that came true was that Obi Wan knew and remembered both R2-D2 and C-3P0. Though R2 actually says it in the movie and Obi Wan denies it, fans knew right away that he was lying in order to protect Luke. And they were right. The prequels confirmed this, and it became more than clear that they had a shared past. These fans are pretty amazing in what they do, and not even The Simpsons are as good at telling the future. What do you think of these fan theories? Did we miss any predictions that also came true? Let us know down below, and don't forget to subscribe to ScreenRant to keep up with all of our newest content.